This happened just days ago, while I was home alone on a pair of days off. Tuesday night, too lazy to cook, I ordered food delivery. About 45 minutes later, I peeked out casually and noticed something odd. A car pulling into my driveway. Checking the app, my driver was still 10 minutes away. I stayed inside, waiting. When the real driver finally arrived, the unfamiliar car was still there. I asked him if he noticed anyone inside. He shrugged, said a man was sitting in the driver's seat, and left. That car didn't move. A few minutes after I sat down to eat, a knock rattled my front door. I froze. No one was there when I peeked out. The strange car was still unmoved, though. Nervously, I stepped into the night and approached it. The seat was empty. Worse, the car had no plates at all. Panic lodged in my chest. I went straight back inside to call the police. But when I looked at my couch, my phone was gone. That was when I heard it, the faint creak of a hinge. Quiet, deliberate footsteps moving in the hall, then stopping. Whoever was in my house was waiting just around the corner, near the front door. I couldn't go that way. I dashed for the back, yanking the lock and fleeing out urgently. As the cool night air hit me, a voice rang behind, calling my name. Not just my first name, my last name too. I spun in terror. A man charged from the doorway, face illuminated just enough for me to realize he was a complete stranger. I didn't wait. I sprinted through the neighborhood, street after street, until I couldn't hear him anymore. Eventually, I found someone willing to call for help. The man was gone by the time police looked. My phone was tossed outside in the yard, untraceable. This wasn't a random robbery. Whoever he was, he had studied me. He knew who I was. He watched. That night made one thing clear. I need to leave this place forever. In late 2021, when I didn't have a place of my own, I temporarily moved into my grandparents' old house. They had both passed away years before, and the family kept it rather than selling. It mostly sat quiet, used here and there for vacations. For me, at that time, it was just a free roof over my head. To be honest, though, I hated the house. It felt ancient, with floors that moaned at every step, and shadows that seemed heavier than they should have been. Still, not having to pay rent made it worth it. About 2 months in, one evening after work, I parked in the driveway and started up the path. That's when one of the neighbors, an elderly woman I'd spoken with a few times about my situation, walked over. She reminded me that I had once told her I stayed there alone, which is why she looked concerned. Earlier that morning, she swore she saw someone pacing behind the upstairs windows, but my car hadn't been there. Her story unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Inside later, I checked around, finding nothing. The house looked empty. That night rolled on like any other. I ate, stayed up watching TV way past midnight, and eventually dragged myself upstairs. The only light I'd turned on at that point was in my bedroom. The rest of the house was drowned in darkness. The bedroom itself had 2 sides, one leading toward the bathroom lined with mirrors, the other toward a cramped hallway with a closet and an old vanity desk. Above it was a single dangling bulb with a pull string. I never used that light, not once. So when I glanced back after turning everything off and saw its pale glow pouring into the hall, my whole body froze. The string light swayed gently as though someone had disturbed it. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I reached and tugged it off myself. It required deliberate pressure. There was simply no way it had turned on accidentally. My mind jumped back to what my neighbor had told me, that something, or someone, had moved through the window earlier. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe the electricals were faulty. Maybe the pull switch jammed, but the unease clung to me tighter than I wanted to admit. I locked myself in the bedroom for a while until the paranoia forced me up again. I opened the door and headed down the creaky hall to the spare room across. As soon as I stepped in, an alarm went off in my gut. The old bed underneath the stacks of boxes wasn't empty. There was a lump beneath the covers, the distinct shape of a person. My step gave me away. The floor groaned loudly. The figure sat straight up. He wasn't sleeping. His eyes met mine instantly. Heart slamming, I bolted. Down the hall, down the stairs, out into the night. I flew across the street straight to my neighbor's. She pulled me in and called the police. By the time authorities checked the house, the man was gone. Nothing valuable had been stolen. Nothing disturbed. Which means stealing wasn't his reason for being there. People suggested maybe he was squatting secretly. But then, I'd been living there 2 months already. He had to know. Was he lurking in rooms while I slept? Hiding in shadows while I cooked or showered? I never stayed after that, and I never will. I was on my way back from visiting family, doing what I always do, pushing myself to cover the long 14-hour stretch in one exhausting drive. By midnight, fatigue was crashing down on me. I needed fuel, both for the car and myself. The highway was empty, surrounded either by dark woods or endless open fields. Finally, I spotted a little gas station tucked into a tree line just off the road. It didn't look modern, just old pumps, no overhang, no bright neon lights. The place looked lifeless, until I noticed 3 or 4 cars in the lot. Convinced it must be open if people were there, I parked and walked up. The moment I cracked the door open, an eerie sight froze me in place. Inside, 4 or 5 men stood silent and scattered. They all turned their heads simultaneously toward me. Not a blink. Not a word, just expressionless stares that locked me in. The store shelves were stripped bare, making the place look abandoned. Yet these men just stood among them like they had been waiting. Every instinct screamed at me. I backed out slowly, let the door close, and paced quickly back to my car. I didn't look back. I simply drove off. But minutes later, headlights appeared behind me. Fast, multiple sets. One car overtook me, pulled abruptly in front, and slammed its brakes. I swerved wildly, stopping inches from a collision. My horror spiked as 2 more cars boxed me in. Doors opened. Men stepped out. These were the same from the gas station. I made a desperate choice. I shot off the side of the road, bumping through rough ground, crashing into dense trees until my car jammed. I abandoned it, dashed into the black forest, and didn't stop. I ran until branches scraped my face and all sound, but my pulse disappeared. I hit against a tree and stayed still, barely breathing, until an hour had passed. Then I crept back with GPS to the road. The cars were gone. Mine was still jammed between the trees, but intact. I got lucky. I will never know who those men were or what they were doing in that station, but I know deep down that they didn't want me to ever leave after seeing them.